And today we're going to be talking about materials and supplies for starting to paint, learn how to paint watercolors. Glad you've joined me. Obviously the first thing you need is watercolor paint. And that comes in different varieties. There's a student grade and there's a professional grade. And if you've never painted before in watercolors, it might be best that you buy the student grade. You can buy an entire kit like this one for less than $10 at any of your craft stores. This one has a range of colors in them. Don't need to go over them, but it's a yellow, red, and blue basic colors besides some others like burnt sienna, burnt umber, and different blues. They will include probably a black and a white. You really don't need those at first, certainly not the black. The problem with student grade colors is that they won't, after you've painted a picture, the colors in the picture will not last as long. The permanency is not there. The light fastness, they will pick up the UV rays and so forth and become lighter. So it's better when you, at the beginning, just to test it out, maybe student grade, maybe only buy 3 or 4 colors, the basic colors, complementary colors. But then to gradually pick up tube at a time professional quality paints, and I'll show you those in a moment. You can buy the tube type, what I've shown you there, and this one is they are student grade, and they're about as long as my finger, about as thick around as my finger, whereas the professional grade is a little fatter. This is 0.4 ounces. This is 0.5. Some of them are a little larger. Not sure what this one is. Can't find it. This one is a little larger than that. It's 24 milligram. So they come in various sizes, but you'll notice that they're a little larger to begin with. And that should tell you something there. They'll also be individually priced. These professional ones will. The student grade, all the prices will be the same because they're not made from the same materials. They don't have to vary the prices. So you can buy them in the tubes, or you can buy them in kits like this. You've seen those, no doubt, in school. It comes with a small brush, which really is not that good of a brush. Don't mean the quality of this, but you really don't need to be painting with a brush that small on the end. You need, this one doesn't have a number on it even. Well, it says it's number 9. I really don't understand their numbering because that's not a normal number 9 brush. But that's what will usually come with it, something that will fit into these kits, very small, but we'll talk about brushes a little later. You can see the basic colors are red and orange, yellow, green, purple. I'm not sure, that's a blue, I'm sure, and it's a black and a burnt umber. You don't need the black, but the rest of them, you can make all your colors from the 3 complementary colors, red, yellow, and blue. But it's nice to have some others to mix with it, so you can do it in a hurry. You don't have to worry about color mixing and learning color theory here at the beginning. I do not prefer these. You can see mine's not been used. I bought this as a sample to show students. This one's made by Prang. It says professional, but I have my doubts how professional it is. But it's a good way to start if you want them all together in a simple little box. You don't have to worry about tubes like this, but it's really up to you. As I say, and I'm not sure what this costs anymore. It's been a while since I've had this. But usually you can buy these whole sets for less than $10. Not sure if that one came with a brush or not, but that's irrelevant because you can find brushes very inexpensively to begin with. A little bit more about the paints. The professional grade will last longer. I would advise, if you are an intermediate and certainly are a beginner that you've decided that watercolors is something you'd like to do, I would gradually move to buying first quality watercolor paints. Now, there are a number of companies that make them. You can usually tell they're professional because, first of all, they will be individually priced. For instance, this one in its day was $19.80. You say, wow. Actually, this company that I bought these from is 50% off, so it's just half of that. So it's not nearly as bad. This one is $13.30. Would be half of that, of course. But here, cobalt blue, which is they use different gems to grind up to make this. That's $23.70. Of course, that's 50% off of that. But these happen to be M. Graham, which is a professional company, and Da Vinci. Here's one from Lucas. Most of these companies also will make a student grade, so be careful of that. If it's too inexpensive, then you probably are buying a student grade paint. But you can get by, if you just wanted to start with a professional grade, you could get by with just 3 colors, a red, a blue, and a yellow. Bright yellow and an ultramarine blue or cobalt blue would be fine, and a permanent red, or if it was a Winsor & Newton color, it'd be Winsor red. So any number of reds are possible. But then I would move on. You might want to buy green. Green is difficult to use correctly, so you can mix all your greens, of course, but sap green is a good color to have. Yellow ochre is a good color to have. It's a little harder to mix. You want these sometimes very handy, and these are not necessarily very expensive colors. Cobalt blue is a very good blue. Burnt sienna is one of my basics. This one was $13.30, so it's about half of that, less than $7. And these tubes will last a long time. You say, well, I can buy a big can of paint for that for my house. Yes, you can. But these are much finer grade, and while it seems to be expensive at first, they will last you a long, long time. Because you remember, you thin these down. They're transparent colors. You thin these down with water. Water is your basic substance, not the paint. Paint only tints the water. So, and I happen to have a red here, which is quinacridone red, which I like. And one of my favorite colors, which looks like orange, which is scarlet pearl. So what colors you buy eventually will be up to you, but I would move to a professional grade as soon as possible. If you can afford it, I would start with them, because that way you can get used to them. And one of the things in watercolors that you have to get used to are the variables. Everything is a variation, all the things, from paints to brushes to paper. So as soon as you lock in on your favorites, then you can get used to how that performs. So so much for the colors. Now, what about brushes? Obviously, well, you would expect then, if I have all those colors, I'd have a lot of brushes. Well, I do have a lot of brushes, but for years, these were the only brushes I needed and used. I'm not sure you can see that. Let me put something white down here. You can see that this is a 1.5 inch brush, and actually I can paint 90% of my pictures with that one brush. You say, wow, how do you do that? Well, you can use it for a wash, to put a lot of water down on your paper, and you can spread it apart with your fingers, get up close, and actually go down to just a few hairs like that if you want. But normally you don't need to do that because most of your watercolor is just blocking in basic larger areas. Now if you paint just a small pictures, then obviously that brush is not going to do you a lot of good. But this brush cost about $1.50 at one time, several dollars now. I like the slim handle here, but it's a hog bristle brush, and you don't want for this, you don't want the synthetic, the artificial hairs. This is a little different here. I got this at the hardware store. You can get them at if you wanted to buy one at a paint store, art store, then this did come from an art store. I think it's Hobby Lobby. Master's Touch is the brand. Not sure who sells that, but this is 1.5 inches also. You can see it's the same size, and they hold a lot of water, and they are for laying down your basic wash at the beginning of clear water. But you also can paint with them, and you can do sort of the same thing as I did with that. You can turn it on its side, make small strokes or large strokes like this. This is a basic one. You can see it's been around for a long time. This is the number 10 or 12. It's worn off. It looks like about a number 10 now. It may have worn down some. But a number 10 or 12 are your basic ones. This is a number 14 here. You can see the size of it. This is a newer brush. This is a better brush. This is a Grumbacher brush. Round. These are rounds, perfectly round. The better if you have a point on the end, you can see the points here, the better off you are. The points begin to wear down rather quickly, so you need to take care of them. This brush I've had for quite a long time. The enameling has come off, the paint has come off, but it doesn't make a difference. You can still use them, take care of them. You can have brushes forever. I've accumulated probably hundreds of brushes. I can't turn the camera to show you, but nearby I have at least 50 brushes within reach. So you will keep the brushes a long time. But you can begin with the inexpensive ones. I didn't show you this last one, but this is a very thin brush. We call a rigger or a script brush to sign your name or to make long lines, to limbs for trees and so forth. But those 3 brushes pretty well do it. Now many of your kits will come with a brush this size. I'll show you. That's a number 14 and this is a number 6. So you can see the size of those 2 brushes. So a lot of your kits will come with this size because they'll fit into the kits first of all. This one I've actually broken off so that it would fit in a smaller kit. But I'm not sure this one came in a kit, but don't think it did by the brand name there. But anyway, brushes are not your biggest expense. Now you can pay a lot for brushes. I've got brushes that are probably $50 or $60 brushes. Here is a better brush here, low corner. This is a wash brush, laying down a lot of water in one place. I don't necessarily paint with this brush, but it could. Okay, moving on from brushes. If you take care of brushes, by the way, they'll last for many, many years, 20 or 30 years. They may change in their use. If they lose their sharp point, now they can be used for something else. Well, you have your paint and you have your brushes, but what are you going to, where are you going to put the paint? You've no doubt seen some painters and they have what we call palettes of all kinds, but in watercolor you need a white non-porous surface that will not absorb the water, because you're going to use that water. You don't want it to be absorbed into whatever you're using. You also don't want it to be something that is so porous or slippery that the water beads up. You can use that, but it makes it very difficult. For instance, some students will use foam plates, paper plates. While they're inexpensive and available and you can dispose of them rather easily, The problem with those is many times the water, as you mix them, will bead up, and so you really can't see the transparency of it spread out on the palette. But there are all sorts of palettes, and some of them are very inexpensive, so you can purchase one at most craft stores very easily. And I'll show you some samples of them. Here's a very small one. It's about 7 inches long. It's got a place for the paints in here. You would put the paints in here and then do a little mixing in here. Obviously, this is one for travel. I'm not sure where this came from. It probably came out of a kit of some sort that I had. Then you have ones that fold up like this one. This one's I've not had very long. I got it for travel. You can see that as you open it up, it has a place for all your colors, and I've actually written the colors on here because sometimes you say, well, why can't you tell the color? Well, once they're in here, once they're down, you know it's a yellow, but you might not know exactly what kind of yellow, and there are a number of brands and shades of greens and yellows and blues, so it's just easy to write it down on your palette somewhere if you can. So you put the paint in here, and when you use it next time, all you need to do is to spray it with a spray bottle and soften it up before you start to paint. You can also do that with this. You say, it's pretty dirty in here. Don't you ever clean it up? Well, actually, I do sometimes, but many times I don't, because there's nothing wrong with this paint. As you can see, already the paint has dispersed and is almost usable now. So yeah, I always wet my mixing surfaces as well. Sometimes if I want a clean one, we'll take a paper towel and just wipe it off. But it's and you can also put your brushes in here. I usually carry my brushes in a separate area. But this is one kind. There's a little thumb hole to hold it like that if you want to paint outside or somewhere with it. You got little brush places you can put your brushes. Obviously they're small brushes and not big brushes like mine. They wouldn't fit in there. But I don't do much plein air painting. As painting outdoors on location. Most of it's studio painting, so that's not really relevant to me. But this is a good travel thing to take with you if you're going on vacation. Another inexpensive palette would be this one, or one like it. You see it's got holes where you could put your paint. I don't use this very regularly, but I do once in a while use it as an alternative mixing surface. And you see that these are slanted, so the water runs down this way. And these are round, and these are flat mixing surfaces. So that really is based on your style, but this didn't cost but a couple of dollars at the most. Some people have access to the old enamel metal pans that came out of refrigerators and everything else, and these come in all sizes. Some are called butcher's trays, but if you find them at flea markets or somewhere, some people do collect them, so they may not be inexpensive, but they're very good surfaces and they last forever. And you can just put your paints around the edges and then just draw them into the center for a mixing area if you'd like. Now this is a small one, but I have some that are 2 or 3 feet long and maybe 16, 18 inches wide at the highest. And they make very good areas to mix. Then, this was one that was made out of plastic that I found. It says J.C. Penney on the back. I'm not sure what it was or what it was for, but it's plastic or like melamine or some of those substances. It's not too smooth that it will bead up, but you can put your paints in here and move it around. I used this for many years. You can see it's cracked here, but that doesn't make any difference. But all these need to be white. And Here's another one, that commercial one that you can buy. It's sort of shaped like what you see oil painters do with put the thumb in there. But I don't do that, of course. But it's another mixing surface for me. You could put your paints around here. This one, by the way, there's no price on it either, but I think it's less than $2. Several mixing areas and a place to put your brushes if you want. If you're painting outdoors or something like that, that one won't fit there. But to hold your brushes. But you can buy these fairly inexpensively. The cheapest one probably is this one. Put your paints around on the side, mix in the middle. Obviously, you wouldn't want to use this at home too often. Maybe at the beginning when you're starting, because this little mixing surface here is going to restrict what you can do. It's just not good to be in a habit. You need a lot of mixing areas so that you can have different pools of mixable paint in different parts of your palette. But this is very inexpensive. This was $1.30 it was priced. I probably got it less than that with coupons, discount coupons. Now here's one. This is ceramic. Not sure where it came from or what it's for, but you can see there's a mixing area here. You could put your paint up in here and mix down this way, or mix over in here. You might find something like this around in a thrift store or somewhere, and that's perfectly all right. All of these have the same characteristics of being white, and they all can spread out the color like this. It won't beat up. This is another commercial one. It says 78 on the back. Don't know what that means, but it was plastic. There's no name on the brand or anything. So anyway, you can see that there's various ways you can use this to mix. I like a lot of mixing areas. So there are some others that are very nice as well. I didn't get them out, but you can go to a art supply store and find they're very inexpensive and will hold your paints very well. Some of them, sort of like the one I showed you that closed up, have a cover. They're maybe this size and have a cover, large mixing area, and that cover will help keep the paints moist or semi-moist for a few days. But that's not a big issue in watercolors too much, because you can come back with your spray bottle, which you can get any kind of spray bottle you want, mister, to spray your watercolors, and they come back to life. They're not like some of the other colors like acrylics or oils that once they dry up, they're dead for you. Watercolors, you can come back to them a year or two later and spray on it and probably revive them enough to paint a painting. I'm not advising that so much, but that's possible. Now, you have the paint, you have your brushes, you have the place to put your paint and to mix it. So what are you going to paint on? Well, you need obviously paper. Watercolors is always painted on paper. You need to use a good paper. Now, I would recommend that you buy professional grade, good paper right off the bat. But if you're really just trying watercolor out, you're not sure you ever want to do it, then you might buy one of the inexpensive pads. It has to say watercolor on it. Probably about 140 weight paper. It comes in 90, 140, 300, and 400. Probably the student grade, more inexpensive paper will always be 90 or 140. 140 is a good weight paper to use. It'll be marked on the paper. Now, I really don't have too much inexpensive paper to show you, and I don't really want to encourage that, but I'm saying if you want to buy some of that just to practice your brush strokes and so forth, that's fine. Some people are intimidated by the good paper. It costs more, but one thing I found over the years, the paper is so important to what your final product looks like. How you can accomplish the kind of strokes, watercolor strokes, and gradations that you need to use inexpensive paper, or even use another brand of paper, is always different. Even in the better papers, they differ from brand to brand, and so it's good to find a particular kind of paper or papers that you like. Now, what is a good paper? Well, it will say, first of all, that it's 100% rag and acid-free. Acid-free is very important. It should say that right on the front. Now, Cotman is a brand of Winsor Newton, which is a student-grade paper or supplies normally. I found this one to be fairly good. Cotman usually, Winsor Newton, of course, is a very fine company, but Cotman is usually their student grade in paints, I know. But this particular one seems to be pretty good. This was a watercolor pad I picked up just so for travel. It's 10 by 7 in size. It's 140 pound weight, or 300 GSM. In America, we normally just go by the 140. It's cold pressed. Watercolor paper comes in 3 surfaces. There is a very smooth surface, which is hot press, HP. There is an intermediate grade, which is cold press, just a few little dimples in the paper. And then there is rough paper. And rough is exactly what it says. It has more dimples and ups and downs in the paper, and is usually a softer paper, more absorbent. This is, you can't see the grain, I'm sure, on this. And every brand will have a different grain of paper. This is why I say get used to a particular brand of paper and stay with it. You'll be better off. Don't keep switching around. Particularly if you've got a good grade of paper, don't switch around from a poor grade to a good grade to different companies until you get used to one particular company. Now, what I've done with this is a spiral bound pad, and as I said, it's 140 pound, which is a good weight to start with. And it has some interesting things here you can read, but I've made this chart for myself based on the colors that I have in my available for me here in my palette, on my palette, and in my supplies drawer. And you can see the different colors here. Now, I put these colors on here. They didn't come from a store or anything. This is cobalt blue, and you can see the differences in color, I think. Ultramarine blue, phthalo blue, diazonine purple, magenta, neutral tint, burnt sienna, permanent red, quinacridone red, scarlet pyrrole. These are the ones that I told you about earlier. But you can see there's all kinds of yellows, yellow ochre, burnt umber, carmine, quinacridone rose, Prussian blue, and so forth. So you could make yourself a chart for yourself like this. Just take a little bit of your color, not thick now, and start at the top. The idea was to start at the top of this and make it pure color with water, of course, not right out of the tube, but diluted with water, pretty strong, and then get it lighter as it goes, so that you see what the light, because you're going to use it both ways. You're going to use a concentrated area, and you're going to use a very light area of your paint. So that's what these show. I think it even continues on to the back. Yes, you see those are some more colors that I have. Some of them are very pretty, but I don't use them very often. But you see, that's the size of the painting. I don't have a painting there to show you. But this one comes with 12 sheets. Each sheet is, you can see that's sort of cardboard thickness. Actually, this feels stronger and thicker than the normal 140-pound paper, sort of almost like 200-pound paper. Now here's another size. Now this is definitely professional grade paper. It's the Canson brand. It tells you that it's cold press, and it's 100% acid free. Tells you here. It tells you the poundage and the size and how many sheets. 15 sheets. And this one is what we call a block. I can't peel the sheets off of this one because they're all glued around the edges. So there's 15 sheets here that are glued around the edges. So what do? Well, the nice thing about this is a support. You can paint right on this, and your paper is not going to buckle. So that's nice. A block is very useful that way. And when you finish, at the top here, usually, at the bottom on this one, there's a place that's not glued, and you put a knife down in that first sheet and pull it away and go all the way around and pops the sheet off. So that's a good brand, and gets a little bigger. That's 9 by 12. Now here is Arches paper, a very popular, excellent professional brand paper, cold pressed, 100% cotton or rag. There's 20 sheets in this, 140-pound weight, 12 by 16 is the size. We know it's acid free because of the cotton. Arches paper has been around many, many years. It's a French paper, and used by many professionals. And it's also, this one is also on a block. You can see here where it's not sealed, you put your knife down in there and just run it around the edges. Now this surface is a little different than the surface on the one I just showed you. That's what I'm saying. You cannot see this, but just running your hand across this, you can tell that this surface is not the same as this. It's a different brand, and the same goes with this small one here. If you run your fingers across that. This is a mold-made paper. Some papers are handmade. But you can't go wrong with Arches paper. It will serve you well over the years. And I would advise getting a small block of it right away, particularly right after you learn to use your brushes and make strokes and the consistency of the paints. So we said in paper, it should be 100% rag or cotton, acid-free. The sizes are really up to you. They come in many sizes, in blocks, in pads like the first, also in sheets, individual sheets. The individual sheet, what we call a full sheet, is 22 inches by 30 inches. Now you can get jumbo size, you can get larger than that, but that's a standard full-size sheet, 22 by 30. Now you may not want to paint that large, and they'll run on retail. The Arches will run retail in the year 2017, anywhere from $12 to $15 a sheet, depending on where you get it, for 300-pound paper. Now 140-pound paper is less than that. Now here is the nice thing about that. I don't have 300-pound here to show you, and you probably couldn't tell the weight difference anyway on a video. But when you get a full sheet, you can cut that into halves or quarters. You can have a 15 by 22 inch sheet. You can cut that into a 15 by 11 sheet, and you can cut that even again. So you can get different sheets out of that one sheet. So, but you can be sure if it comes an individual sheet, it's probably a professional grade paper. So it comes in pads, it comes in the blocks that are attached to the thing, and it comes in sheets. One other thing I need to tell you while we're talking about water is, paper, is that you have to have a support. Now, I talked about the beauty of the blocks is that they are on a firm support. You don't have to attach them to anything. But if you talk about individual sheets, then you need to attach it to something. And if you're familiar with drafting boards that are made sort of like this is a small one, made of lightweight material, very smooth, about that thick. It's about 3/4 of an inch thick, and you could put the paper down on that and use masking tape to mask around the corners of it. That would apply it to your paper, and that became your foundation or your support. And these come, you can find them at yard sales and flea markets and places at times. They come in various sizes, all the way up to the full size of this table, which maybe be 3 by 4 feet tall. But you really don't need that. You can use something like this. Now, this is masonite that you can get at the hardware store. This is actually from a frame that I had it was a backing on one of the commercial frames that you buy at any of the stores, and I don't like that material, so I use a mat board or other foam board or something as a backing for my framed pictures. But you can see, but you could buy this at a store too. And so you would put your piece of paper down on this and put your tape around it. This one happens to have gotten torn, so I'm going to have to use it for a scrap or something else. I could just use it for a smaller picture. But you have to attach it like this, because when you apply water to this, the tendency of this is to stretch. And when it's stretched, it's going to buckle. The heavier the paper, the less the buckle. And we won't go into how you stretch it, because that's for another lesson. But you need a support, you need to put it down if you don't use a block. Well, obviously I've said you needed some tape if that's the way you're going to go with your paint. You need a pencil to draw. A sketchbook is always good to make sketches before you begin your painting, to do just learning how to draw. An eraser, these are kneadable erasers. Many of you know about these. They are sort of like a heavy gum, pliable, like Play-Doh. But the beauty of these, they don't leave any residue on your paper. You don't want to use a red rubber or anything like that that will affect the surface of the paper or leave debris. So a kneaded eraser lasts you forever, because even if it gets dirty, you keep on using it. So I think that's about it. I've told you about the squeeze bottles and the various brushes. Oh, one other thing. In some of my videos and painting, you'll see that I'm using something that looks like this, which I would lay across my paintings from time to time like this. Well, what this is, I call it a bridge. If there is some area of the paper that I need to work on, that this area down here would still be wet, in order to work on that, I can use my hand off the surface, but if it's a very tiny area or a detailed area, I may want to do that. So I need a support. Now, you can use a piece of paper, just putting it on there and painting. You don't want your hand to get onto the paper and let the oils of your hand get on the paper. Well, there's one thing which I almost forgot, which is pretty obvious. the main ingredient of watercolor is water. So you have to have a supply of water. And what do you keep it in? Now, they make cups you can buy, fancy ones like this that put water in there, and you can use these various things to clean out your brush and scrape it across the bottom and so forth. Here's even one little thing here you put it in, slide through, put your brushes here. But I've had this, but I seldom ever use it, quite frankly. I see one television instructor uses it for acrylics quite often, but acrylics you don't have to worry about changing the water so much. But you need clean water in watercolors, and I've always just used these quart-size containers. I have a number of them. They're very inexpensive. This is made for paint mixture. It's got the amounts on the side, which you don't need because you just need to fill it up with water. This obviously was my dirty one. I used two, one for clean water and one from dirty water. And if I really want it clean, I'll have a third one of absolutely clean water. And it will get dirty, and you need, if it's a long painting, you may have to throw your dirty water out and refresh it with some clean water, or else you're not going to be cleaning your brushes. When you put in the cleaning cup to clean, it doesn't really come out clean. Then when you put it into the clear water to get a fresh supply of water to use on your paper, all the color is not gone. And that's going to mix with what other color you're using, so that's not good. So sometimes I would actually use 3 or change my water more often. And the last thing is clean up. You don't need to clean up your palette. You can leave it like it is. Your brushes need to be cleaned every time you use them. That's why the fewer brushes you use, the better off you are. Just go put them under the sink, put some dish detergent in your hand and put it on the brush and roll it around until all the color is out, back and forth between the water. And when it's finished, some people suggest that you take your hand and bring it to a point. I don't do this. My wife doesn't like it, but I flick it, and when you flick it, it will come to a natural point. And then you dry it on the side or straight up. Never leave a brush point down. If you do, you will bend these fibers over and they'll never be the same. It's almost impossible to get them straight again. So always store them upright in your containers or on their sides. Either way, it's fine. So, it's been a long lesson, but these are all the supplies you need, and happy painting. Well, I hope you've learned something from this today and learned a little bit about what you need to start watercolors. You don't need a lot, but you can start with a very few things and then add to them as you go. So I'm glad you've joined us, and if you've liked this video, check with my video YouTube channel. You may subscribe. I would appreciate it. Share it with others. You can go onto my website, rayedmonds.com, and I have other videos there as well. Thank you for joining me.